Hey everyone, welcome back to Missy's Enchanted Channel. Don't forget to subscribe. We are on part 11 of True Tales of Ghostly Encounters. I know I haven't did this one in a while, but it's because I was waiting for a new tripod and I finally got one, thank God. Because the other one was a disaster. But any hoot, I hope you guys had a nice day today and let's get started. All right, we are on Brother-in-Law's Warning. February 1992 was a devastating time for my family. My son-in-law Robert died in a scuba diving accident at age 30. My daughter Meryl was left to raise her son Daniel, who was only 5 months old at the time. It has taken years for her to recover from her grief. One evening in May of that year, I was knitting and watching one of my favorite TV programs. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a slight movement. Glancing across the room, I saw Robert standing in the doorway, a huge grin on his face. I sat motionless, longing to turn off the TV, but frightened in case any move would cause me to lose him. I smiled at him and we had a conversation that took place in our heads. I didn't speak at all, but the communication was as clear as if we were talking. I told him how we all missed him, especially Meryl, and asked him to please help her to cope with her life now. As he had been an experienced diver and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police had found nothing wrong with his diving gear, I asked him what had happened. He said it had been his own fault as he had been careless. He then told me he had come to give me a message from my son Rob, who lives in Thailand. I was surprised as the two young men had only met a few times. Robert stated quite clearly, "Tell Rob that if he doesn't change his life soon, he will end up with me in the near future." I wanted to ask Robert more questions, but he had gone. I turned off the TV and sat for a long time, marveling at what had happened. I didn't dare tell the family about Robert's visit, as it seemed so unbelievable. It was several years before I even broached the subject with Meryl, but when I did, she was not surprised. She feels his presence, too, occasionally, and sees tiny flashes of blue light when he is near. After a week of wrestling with my thoughts, I decided to phone my son and risk him thinking his mother had completely lost her mind. I knew Rob had recently started a new job that he really enjoyed. His life had sounded fine when I had last spoken to him. Rob was surprised to hear from me, as we had spoken only a few weeks before. I told him he must promise not to think me insane, and then I related the facts of his brother-in-law's visit. There was silence on the other end of the phone, long enough for me to ask if he was still there. When Rob finally spoke, he sounded shaken. He told me he had kept the details of his life from me as he didn't want me to worry. Rob wanted to end a relationship with a girl he had dated for almost a year. He had tried several times in recent months to talk to her, but she told him she would commit suicide if he ever left her. She was extremely possessive and questioned his every move. The situation had now worsened. Her father had threatened Rob with death if he deserted his daughter. My son felt his life was spinning out of control. I urged Rob to return to Canada immediately, but he said he would never forgive himself if his girlfriend carried out her suicide threat. I told him she was using that as a hold on him, and it was most unlikely she would go through it once he had left. I was later proved to be right, as she apparently found another boyfriend soon after Rob left. Rob was back in Canada within days. He left Thailand at night and did not even dare to tell his employee where he was going in case word got back to the irate father. Rob stayed with me for a month and then returned to Thailand, sitting hundreds of miles away from where he had lived previously. As the years go by, the memory of Robert's visit stays vividly in my memory. Today, my son is happily married and he is the father of an 18-month-old daughter. I know we have Robert to thank for his happiness. And that was Margaret Davies, Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada, August 2001. Wow. I actually like that. You know, if it wasn't for Robert, someone had known all this stuff. Well, he would have known about the girlfriend and everything, but, you know, it just worked out for the best. So that's good. Now we are moving on to unfinished business promise kept, task completed after death. So it's a new chapter. Let's see, what chapter does it say over here? It says 89. All right. Death is the ultimate interruption, the deadline of all deadlines. What is left undone at the time of passing is, to the rational, common sense view, beyond completion. Or is it? The following stories indicate that sometimes responsibility for one's loved ones and promises is strong enough to survive the transition. Departed spirits may return to mark significant anniversaries, to resolve conflicts before moving on, or to provide assistance to a person in need. Whatever the nature of the afterlife, these stories speak to an emotional connection between this life and the next. All right, we move on to Jimmy, Is That You? In the summer of 1966, when I was 17, my 19-year-old cousin James Kajara and I spent endless hours discussing our plans for the future. The Jimmy was drafted into the Army. His eventual destination was Vietnam. Before leaving for advanced infantry training at Fort Benning, Georgia, he gave me my Christmas, birthday, and graduation presents. Roy, he said, I have a feeling I won't be back. Don't say that, I pleaded. Promise me you'll be back for my graduation next June. Okay, I promise I'll be back. But 4 months later, on March 11, 1967, he was killed in action. I tried to deny his death. At first I felt empty, then angry. Finally, I felt nothing. Graduation day came and thoughts of Jimmy welled up inside me. The graduating students sat up in the hot bleachers of the Tennyson High School gym while the parents were seated on the main floor. Wiping the sweat off my face, I watched the setting sun cast an eerie light through the doors. Suddenly, a chill swept through my whole body as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice water on my head. I began to shiver uncontrollably. I looked for my mom down in the audience, and then I saw him. Standing in the doorway, just 200 feet away, was Jimmy. A wave of heat engulfed my body. Quickly, I looked away in fear. The student sitting next to me said, "What's the matter? Looks like you just saw a ghost." Though panic-stricken, God, I can't even talk today. Sorry, guys. Wow. I summoned my courage and I looked at Jimmy again. He was wearing his favorite red pendulum shirt, carrying his camera as usual, and smiling directly at me. "Do you see that guy standing over there at the door?" I asked my neighbor. "What guy? Are you all right?" he repelled. But it wasn't a dream. All I could manage was to smile at Jimmy, and then he was gone. My heart sank. Who would ever believe me? Several days later, when I couldn't hold it inside any longer, I confided in Mom, Lillian Masuda. "Tell me when and where you saw him," she said. "What did he look like?" Slowly, I repeated the details of my experience to her. "I thought it was a dream, but I know it wasn't." "It was no dream," Mom said, "because you're describing exactly what I saw, too." I was relieved and stunned all at once. Heretofore, I had never had a feeling about life after death. Jimmy came back to show me the truth. Wow. Well, I guess he believes now, right? Raymond Suda, as told to Corliss Chan, Larkspur, California, February 1986. Okay, now we're going to be moving on to visiting grandparents. My ex-husband was a violent bully during our marriage, and after one particular heavy beating, I crawled back to bed and just lay there. I knew that if my 3-year-old son wakened from his afternoon sleep, I would not be able to go to him. I was past crying and just asked Spirit and my departed father for help. Suddenly, very gently, someone sat on the bed, stroked my head, and held me in unseen arms. I fell asleep and awkward about 5 hours later. Wakened 5 hours later, feeling a lot better. I heard my son laughing and went to him. As I entered the sitting room, he was waving goodbye to someone. Looking around, I saw that not only had he been entertained, but he had also been given snacks. He had obviously had a great afternoon. Somehow I knew I did not have to worry. I asked him who he had been there, and he pointed to a photo of my parents. Gran and Grandpa had spent the afternoon with him, he said. They were always there for me when they were alive, and I know they are still there for us. That's so cool. Pat Kennedy, Glasgow, Scotland, September 2000. See? We don't know everything, don't we, guys? All right, I'm going to read one more. Plea for forgiveness. We were living on a farm near Tulsa, Oklahoma in July 1921. The noise of the men and machinery in the process of baling blue stem hay came with the breeze through the open kitchen window where, shortly before 10 o'clock, I was busy cooking the noon meal for a crew of hungry men, my 3 children in an adjoining room. As I worked, I thought about my mother in Indiana, who slowly was dying of cancer of the liver. Until my husband David and I had moved west, we all had lived in the same house. Not a dad and grandmother, my mother had made my life pretty miserable after the birth of each child. A hush fell over the place. I glanced through the window and saw the men standing around the water keg. I stepped to the door of the next room to see what my children were doing. I gasped. There on my low rocker sat my mother with her arms around my children. Memory of her pain-raven face as it turned toward me still brings tears to my eyes. Her eyes were pleading silently for forgiveness and love. The vision was like a flash, gone in an instant, but as real as life. When my astonished eyes could focus again, I saw my oldest child lying on the floor reading. His feet propped in a chair, his sister sat on the floor dressing the dolls. They were unaware of the shock I had received. I forgot to bake pie that day and was scolded for my negligence. I never did tell my husband of this experience. He would have laughed, but that pleading look in my mother's eyes meant more to me than pies. That same evening, a telegram came. It said, "Your mother died this morning at 10 minutes of 10 o'clock. Well, at least her mother came back and, she was sorry for what she did. That's all that counts, right? Ellen Blazier, Claremore, Oklahoma, December 1964. And that's all I'm going to be reading right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If so, if you have any stories of you or someone that's passed away, you can leave them in the comments below. And if you're liking this, please give it a thumbs up. And I'll definitely talk to you tomorrow. Probably tomorrow, because I want to start getting in the habit of doing a little bit more videos. We'll see what happens. I don't want to promise anything. All right, guys. Stay safe. Have fun. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'll try to talk to you tomorrow. Bye.